could barely keep my eyes open. And I knew I shouldn't have taken another delivery tonight. But college tuition doesn't pay itself, and every tip counts. I'd been awake since dawn cramming for an exam in my physiology class, then hustling through a full shift at the pizzeria. My boss, Mr. Rizzo, had practically begged me to handle one last run. He was short-handed, and I felt guilty saying no. So there I was, at midnight, my eyelids heavy, my brain fuzzy, clinging to consciousness by a thread as I navigated the dark roads. I was so close to finishing my shift. The address was only about 10 minutes away from the store, and in my half-asleep state, I kept telling myself, just get there, drop off the pizzas and go home. My bed sounded like paradise. My focus drifted for just a second. Maybe I yawned or blinked too long, and that's when I drifted into the other lane. The squeal of tires snapped me wide awake. Headlights flashed in my face. My heart pounded as I twisted the steering wheel, too late to avoid a glancing collision. My car's front fender scraped against the other car's side, and I felt a sickening jolt reverberate through my entire body. I hit the brakes, pulling to the side of the road. I glanced in my rearview mirror, adrenaline flooding my system. My hands trembled on the steering wheel, and my breath came in ragged gasps. The other car screeched to a halt behind me. Its headlights stayed on, shining painfully bright. As soon as I stepped out to check the damage, a man stormed toward me, furious. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing jeans and a plain black t-shirt that showed off heavily tattooed arms. He didn't give me a chance to apologize or explain. He just started screaming, his face inches from mine, spittle hitting my cheek. "You idiot! You nearly killed me!" he shouted, shoving me. I stumbled backward, almost tripping over the curb. "I'm sorry," I managed. I lost focus for a second. "I'll pay for the damages. Just let me call the cops and we can file a report, okay?" That suggestion made everything worse. His rage flared like a match thrown on gasoline. "You think calling the cops is going to fix my car? You some kind of wise guy?" he growled. Without warning, he swung a punch. It connected with my jaw so hard I saw stars. I staggered, and he was on me again, landing a series of brutal punches to my ribs and stomach. I crumpled to the ground, gasping for air. I'd never been in a real fight before, never taken a punch, not even a shove like this. My eyes blurred with tears. The pain was sharp, bright, and dizzying. The worst part was the relentless fear. Was he going to kill me right there on the deserted road? The man didn't let up. He kicked me once, twice, each blow stealing my breath. "Stupid kid," he snarled. "This is what happens when you mess with people. You nearly took my life, you hear me?" All I could do was whimper, arms up to shield my face. My mind raced. I have to get away, have to call someone, have to do something. But I could barely move. Eventually, he stopped. His ragged breathing filled the air, mixing with my groans. I tasted blood. He stepped back, eyeing my car. "What you got in there?" he demanded. I just have pizzas," I croaked, still lying on my side. My cheek pressed into the rough pavement. "Pizzas," he repeated, like the idea was ridiculous. Then his lips twisted in a sneer. "Fine. You owe me for my trouble." He marched over to my car, flung open the driver's door, and grabbed my wallet from the seat. I heard him rummage through it. "That's all you got?" he barked. I didn't have a lot of cash, just some small bills from earlier tips. He took them anyway. Then he opened the back seat and found the insulated pizza bag. "Hey, those are for a customer," I said weakly, but the protest died before it left my mouth. I was in no shape to argue. The man grabbed the pizza boxes, tucking them under one arm like a prize. "You better hope that scratch on my car doesn't cost more than you got," he said. "Because I'll find you if it does." With that, he stormed back to his vehicle. My body shook with pain and terror. After another moment, his engine roared to life. He revved it threateningly, and I braced myself for the possibility he might run me over. But then the headlights moved away, leaving me in darkness. I just lay there, panting. My vision was swimming, and I struggled to piece together what had happened. Eventually, I forced myself up, leaning against my car. One of the headlights was busted, and the hood was dented. My phone was on the passenger seat, miraculously untouched. I crawled inside, shaking so hard I could barely dial. When the 911 operator picked up, my voice quavered. "I've been attacked," I managed, wincing with each sharp breath. They asked for my location. Head spinning, I gave them the nearest intersection I remembered. Within minutes, I heard sirens approaching. As I waited, a wave of humiliation washed over me, mixed with relief that I was still alive. That feeling was quickly replaced by the throbbing pain in my ribs. I remember thinking, I never want to do another delivery again. And that night, I realized how quickly a routine job, just a simple pizza run, could transform into a horror I'd never forget. My shift had been surprisingly pleasant that evening. It was a cool, crisp night, and the orders were flowing. Usually delivering pizzas is a pretty laid-back gig. People are happy to see you, often tipping generously, especially in the nicer parts of town. Around 10 o'clock, I got one last call. A large pepperoni with extra cheese and a side of breadsticks. I checked the address and recognized it as part of a wealthy, gated community. As I approached the house, I couldn't help but admire the manicured lawns and stone fountains. It looked straight out of a luxury magazine. The house I was delivering to had a long driveway lined with dim, decorative lights. I parked by the sprawling front steps, feeling that usual pang of envy. Must be nice to live in a place like this, I thought. I rang the doorbell, expecting the typical friendly homeowner. Instead, the door opened just a crack and a man's face appeared. He had a polite smile, but something about his eyes made me uneasy. They were too flat, too impassive. "Your pizza," I said, forcing a cheerful tone. "Pepperoni, extra cheese, breadsticks." He nodded, scanned me up and down, and opened the door wider. "Come on in," he said. "I need to grab my wallet." Stepping inside felt like entering a museum. Polished marble floors, tall ceilings, and expensive artwork hung on the walls. But all that grandeur fizzled when I noticed a young girl, maybe 14, with wide, fearful eyes, peeking from the hallway. The moment she saw me, she frantically waved, like she was desperate to get my attention. Her expression sent chills through me. It wasn't a simple hello. It was more like a distress signal. She put a finger to her lips, glancing nervously over her shoulder. My stomach twisted. What was going on? The man reappeared with his wallet, oblivious to the girl behind him. I forced my face into a pleasant mask, trying to hide my concern. "That'll be $24.50, I said, handing over the pizza box. He counted the bills, slowly. My eyes kept flicking to the hallway, to the girl who was still watching, still silently pleading. I tried not to act suspicious. "Keep the change," he said tersely, handing me a crisp $50 bill. "Now, you have a good night." I nodded, taking the money. "Thank you, sir. You too." As I turned to leave, I heard a whimper from the hallway, soft but unmistakable. I caught a glimpse of the man's face hardening. I felt my pulse spike. Something was very wrong. Once outside, I carefully shut the door behind me. But instead of walking straight back to my car, I crouched behind a tall hedge and watched the windows. I should have just driven away, but I couldn't shake the sight of that terrified girl. Curiosity and concern overwhelmed my instinct for self-preservation. From my spot, I could see a large window that overlooked the living room. The curtains were slightly drawn, but a slim gap revealed light inside. I crept closer, my heart pounding. Suddenly, an angry voice cut through the silent night, followed by a muffled scream. My blood went cold. I fished my phone out of my pocket with shaky fingers. My mind reeled with possibilities. Maybe the girl was in danger, or maybe it was domestic abuse. I had no proof beyond a scream, but that was enough for me. I dialed 911. As I relayed the situation, my voice trembled. I tried to keep it quiet, glancing around to make sure I wasn't seen. The operator assured me they would dispatch officers immediately. My thoughts raced. What if he catches me here? What if the girl is hurt? Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Eventually, flashing red and blue lights illuminated the driveway. Multiple squad cars pulled up, and officers hopped out. One of them approached me with a stern expression. I explained what I'd heard, pointing at the window. They moved in swiftly. One officer rang the bell, while others circled around to the back of the house. The man opened the door, his face a mix of confusion and irritation, until the officers stepped inside, guns drawn, ordering him to stand down. I stayed outside, hugging myself against the cold, my nerves frayed. Then came a sight I'll never forget. The young girl running out the front door, tears streaming down her face. She was wrapped in a police officer's jacket, clinging to him like a lifeline. I overheard fragments of conversation. She says she was being trafficked. House is under suspicion. We found disturbing evidence. My stomach churned. Part of me was relieved that the girl was finally safe. But I felt a wave of nausea at the realization of what had been happening in that beautiful, pristine house. The man, now handcuffed, was led to a squad car, screaming protests of innocence. An officer approached me, took my statement, and thanked me for calling it in. I felt a strange combination of pride and horror. Pride that I had helped, horror at the evil hidden behind those luxurious walls. By the time they let me go, I was shaking. I drove home in a daze, the $50 tip sitting on the passenger seat like a tainted trophy. I couldn't stop replaying the girl's terrified face in my mind. Delivering pizza had always been an easy gig, something to get by while searching for a better job. But that night taught me a lesson I'll never forget. Sometimes a simple knock on a door can reveal a darkness you never imagined. It was past midnight in one of the roughest neighborhoods in town. My boss, Manny, always warned us to be careful there, telling us to leave if a situation felt off. But times were tough, and I needed all the deliveries I could get. Tips in this neighborhood weren't great, but the overtime pay was worth it. I pulled up to a run-down apartment complex, graffiti covering the walls, flickering streetlights casting shadows on the uneven pavement. A police cruiser sat nearby, its flashing lights reflecting off broken windows. At first, I felt a jolt of relief. At least there was an officer present. I grabbed the pizza bag and stepped out of my car, feeling a chill that wasn't just from the cold night air. As I walked toward the building, I noticed the officer had someone pressed up against the side of the cruiser. At first glance, it looked like a standard arrest. Handcuffs, the usual procedure. But something felt off. The figure being arrested was a woman, and she looked absolutely terrified. Her face twisted in pain, and she was struggling, but the officer's grip was unrelenting. I slowed my steps, peering through the darkness. That's when I realized the officer's free hand was roaming where it shouldn't be. A nauseating feeling twisted in my gut. Was he assaulting her? My heart slammed in my chest. This wasn't some random thug. This was a man in uniform, someone sworn to protect us. But there he was, using his power in a monstrous way. I hesitated, uncertain. What do I do? If I intervene, I might be in danger. But the woman was clearly in distress, and I couldn't just walk by like nothing was happening. I kept the pizza bag under my arm and walked closer, hoping my presence would make him stop. "Officer," I called out, my voice tight. "Is everything okay here?" He froze, turned to glare at me. The streetlight caught his face, revealing cold, predatory eyes. "This is none of your business, kid," he snapped. "Move along." I swallowed hard. My instincts screamed at me to back away, but my conscience wouldn't let me. I'm here to deliver a pizza," I stammered, holding up the bag. But I saw..." "You saw nothing," he interrupted, releasing the woman for a split second to jab a finger in my face. She tried to scramble away, but he grabbed her hair, yanking her back. She let out a sharp cry that sent my adrenaline soaring. "Stop!" I yelled, the words spilling out before I could think. "What are you doing? She's in pain!" "Shut up!" he roared. In a flash, he shoved me against the cruiser. The pizza bag fell to the ground. The woman used that moment to break free, stumbling across the street. But she didn't get far. Another officer emerged from the car, apparently responding to the commotion, and apprehended her. I could see the confusion on his face as he took in the scene. The first cop pinned my arms behind my back. His knee ground into my spine, sending jolts of pain across my shoulders. Resisting a police officer, assault, he spat. "You're under arrest," I protested, trying to explain. "I didn't assault you. You were attacking her. He twisted my arm harder, cutting off my words with a gasp of agony. "You keep your mouth shut," he growled, "or it's going to get worse." I could feel the rough asphalt scraping my cheek as he pressed me down. Nearby, the second officer looked on, uncertain. "Hey man, calm down," I heard him say, but his tone was hesitant. Soon I was handcuffed and dumped unceremoniously into the back of the cruiser. The woman was also shoved into the other side, trembling, tears streaking her face. The first cop slammed the door, then exchanged angry words with the second officer. I caught only fragments. Something about body cam, and turn that damn thing off. My heart pounded. Could this be recorded? A desperate hope flared within me. Before I knew it, I was at the station, booked and shoved into a holding cell. My head throbbed from a blow I hadn't even registered in the chaos. Time blurred. I sat on a cold bench, waiting. A series of thoughts spiraled in my mind. Am I going to jail for this? Will anyone believe me over a cop's word? The next morning, a detective approached my cell. His face was grim but not unkind. "We have some footage," he said curtly. "Body cam. You want to tell me what happened?" All at once it spilled out. How I saw the officer assaulting the woman, how I confronted him. The detective nodded, tension evident in his jaw. "We reviewed the footage," he said quietly. "It corroborates your story. The officer's been placed under arrest. You're free to go." Relief washed over me like a tidal wave, though it was tempered by the knowledge of what had happened to that woman. They released me, battered and sore, an apology on their lips that didn't quite erase the horror of the night. Outside, dawn was breaking, painting the sky with pale light. I staggered back to my car, which was still parked at that grim apartment complex. The pizza bag lay on the ground, sauce leaking from the now ruined meal. I picked it up and tossed it in the trunk, my mind churning with the reality that a uniform does not always mean safety. That day, I handed in my resignation at the pizzeria. Some nightmares are too vivid to ignore. I still see those flashing lights in my dreams, hear the woman's screams echoing through the dark. But at least, in the end, the body cam footage revealed the truth. and justice found its way, however painfully, through the night.